Hi everybody, my name is Marcus Toftedahl. I'm from the University of Skovde in Sweden, and I'm going to talk about the game design aspects of serious games. So I'm from a small university in Sweden called University of Skovde. We're quite big on game development, the educations, and also game development research in different kind of aspects. Myself, I'm a lecturer in game design and game writing, and also a game researcher. Currently, I'm doing my PhD project where I look into being very local as a developer in a very global environment or business as the game industry is. I'm also a game designer, and my expertise lies within games in public spaces, and that's what the main presentation will be about, games in museums and cultural heritage sites, and also one project that we did using games in schools. Have any of you been to Skovde? No? Right in the middle of Gothenburg and Stockholm in Sweden, we're located, a small town, only 50,000 inhabitants. So that's super small by Indian measures, I guess. But still, we have a university, quite young, so established in 1977, which has a focus on IT and technology foremost. We have about 8,000 students in all. And a little bit about what we do in games. We have 5 game development educations on bachelor level, which started in 2002. And right now we have about 500 students or so taking one of our programs. We also have 2 research groups focusing on games. One that is focusing on serious games, and also one that is more focusing on the softer side of gaming, called Media, Technology and Culture. And just a little bit of to frame it all, what kind of research that we do. It's all based on the bachelor programs that we have in game design, programming, game writing, graphics, and sound and music. So we cover all aspects of game design and have that in-house with our students' expertise. So that's a great asset when coming to doing these kind of research projects. We also have 2 master's programs. One in serious games, that of course focus on, well, serious games. And we also have one in digital narration that focus on the narrative parts of computer games that could be used for other purposes than pure entertainment. So today I'm going to talk about serious games, applied games, gamification, edutainment, game-based learning. And we believe that these terms, they are in the same domain and not much differ them apart. We have a definition of serious games that we use as a basis for our research project and also for our serious games educations, that serious games are games that engage the user and contribute to the achievement of a defined purpose other than pure entertainment. So the games should be entertaining, of course, otherwise they aren't games, and we cannot use the motivating factors and the things that makes the games interesting to play in this other purpose. And this other purpose, well, it can be defined by the user himself, the developer or the player or whatever. So we also see games, commercial games, as serious games if they are used in a serious purpose. So for this talk, I will be focusing on 3 research projects that we have done throughout the years. One that is an adventure walk at a historical site outside Skovde, the fortress called Callboys Fästning, the fortress of Callboys, where we did both the narrative design for the guided tour and also did specially designed computer games. I will also talk about a game or an exhibition in a museum, which we gamified. We gamified the whole museum space and used a lot of game technology and also specially developed games to enhance the visitor's experience of the people visiting the museum. And the last project I'm going to talk about, it's called Hidden in the Zoo, which is an augmented reality game which combines a board game, Monopoly-like, with a tablet device with augmented reality functions. And this game has a really serious subject. It's about teaching kids about the dangers on the internet to prevent grooming of children on the internet. So, and with these project examples, I will share experiences regarding working with clients outside the game development sector. Also how we design games that is expected to be played in a public space where people might not expect to find a game. And related to this, well, it's a very broad audience. If anybody could play or should play or will play, and also, since they are research projects, we also gather data to try to ensure that the game actually reaches this defined other purpose that we have. And not only the player should be able to play the game. Since we put games in public spaces like museums and cultural heritage sites and schools, they will also be, it's also important that they are easy to use for the people who are maintaining this space. So we cannot do super complex installations that are, well, too complicated to use. And I'm going to talk about two of our design philosophies that I call Pong Design and Wow Factor. And to frame this a little, I will go back a couple of years to 1958, and this is considered one of the first examples of games in the world. It's called Tennis for Two, made by a researcher called William Higginbotham, and he used games to talk about the research that they did on this research facility, the National Brookhaven Laboratory, where they made research on ballistics of missiles and such. Very advanced thing. And each year they had an open house where they invited people over to inform them about what they did. And, well, it might not be that easy to talk about advanced physics for the common man. So he used a game called Tennis for Two to talk about these things. And the fine thing is that he could alter the gravity in the game, so he could make the players play tennis on the moon, and the ball got a very wide angle or ball, or on a big planet like Jupiter, and the ball barely got over the net when played. So by using games, they could talk about what they did. So the first game is also an example of the first serious game in some way. Later on, the games entered the more commercial market, and this is an example of the first commercial game. It's Computer Space by Atari, and it was it flopped because it was too advanced to use. Well, today it might not be that advanced with 4 buttons and so, but this was the first time that public had seen something like this. So, but it was the next project that Atari did, which became a success. And we're back to the tennis again with Pong. And I believe one of the key factors for the success of Pong is the ease of use, and hence, well, the term Pong Design. And I really like the instructions for Pong. Deposit quarter, ball will serve automatically, avoid missing ball for high score. So it's really easy to understand what to do, and in combination with a really easy user interface, you get the core the core of the game right away without having to, well, have a tutorial or a deeper instruction. So the Pong Design I define as, well, an easy to understand interface, also a core gameplay loop that's easy to identify and understand. Here you play tennis with the ball, you control the paddle and hit the ball, well. And also immediate visual feedback when the input is given. As soon as you turn the knob, the paddle moves. So that is really important. The other part of the design philosophy is the wow factor. This is a little bit more abstract, but I guess virtual reality is one example of it. You get this immediate, ooh, this is cool. This is something that I haven't seen before. And this experience can differ based on, well, where the game is supposed to be used or how it's going to be used. So it's not easy to say just one thing that is the wow factor, but it's also important to have that kind of, and it's also important to define it in collaboration with whoever you are working together with. And For the first project, the Callboys Fortress Adventure, I guess the whole of the adventure was a wow factor. It is placed on a historical site outside Skovde, even smaller city, about 5,000 people lives there. But it is a big tourist attraction, especially in the summer. And they had an adventure tour, a traditional one, where people, well, they went on a guided tour through the fortress. But since the visitor numbers were plummeting somewhat, they realized, okay, we need to do something new. We need to attract a broader audience. We need to attract families and kids especially. So we were asked to collaborate with Callboys Tourism Agency to create a new experience using game technology, using game narratives in order to enhance the experience at the fortress. So this resulted in an adventure tour. It takes about 1 hour, the whole duration of the tour. And there are a lot of kinds of media in this tour, starting with a 3D movie. You're guided around, not by an ordinary guide, but by a live role-playing actor who plays a role and takes the group on an adventure. I have a short movie clip here, I believe. Yeah, this is from the introductory movie, which sets the tone and sets also the fictional storyline. We use a fictional storyline which relates to the actual history of the fortress. So this is the villain, Sergeant Steelhammer, who has stolen all the gold, and the group needs to rescue the gold in order to get on. And this is a key factor as well, the guide who managed to get the visitors into the adventure and also to role play themselves. Here they act as soldiers in order to escape from the villain. And soon we will get into the gaming part of it. We also designed a specific game room which was supposed to enhance the experience even more. So where we could do things that we can't do in the real setting. So we custom built both interfaces and also the screens and the game itself in order to fit into the experience as a whole. So this is a game room where 35 to 40 players can play at once and using, well, special designed input devices, which relates to this Pong Design that I talked about. Really easy interface. You pick up a ball and you have motion controls, and you also have step sensors that you stand on, so you use your whole body to play the game. So we custom made this, and of course it has to be reliable. They were expecting about 30,000 people each year to play this game, so it has to be very reliable and also fit into the environment of the fortress itself. And this is a little bit about the wow factor. When we tried out the game, making this, we had a group of 15-year-olds which were the core target audience. And we thought when we had developed the first version of the game, we needed to try it out to see if it was any fun for the target audience. So we invited a group of about 15 years into our lab to try the game. And at the first session, the first test session, we found out that they absolutely hated the game. It wasn't fun at all. And, well, what could we do? Well, we were quite far into the development, but okay, we tried to think of what could we do to make it more fun. And we did another testing session where we instead put the exact same setup of hardware and software, but we put it on the fortress, on the actual site, and tried it. Same game, same group, and they loved it. So this is a good example of the wow factor. The site itself, combined with the game, was good, was much better than just the laboratory test. So that is also very important to have in mind when designing these kind of games in public spaces. Interaction-wise, we try to keep it as simple as possible, where one game was about putting out fire using a fire hydrant. One game was about shaking a whole room using these step sensors. So they should run on the spot to make a room shake, and the game's physics engine would throw things around in the room. Rather, not that historically correct, but it was fun. The more historically correct part was this. Well, you cannot see that much maybe, but you were taken on a tour at night in the village that surrounded the fortress. And this was historically accurate. We used the layout and the houses and everything from the actual time period. So this project was about the Pong Design using movement-based controls and also immediate feedback, and both sensory and graphical. The custom-made game controls that we built, they were also shaking a lot, so when things happened or exploded or so, you could feel it in your whole body. Imitation game was also very interesting to see, because we hadn't any time for any introduction or to explain what the game was all about. So combined with the movement-based controls and the immediate feedback, people imitated each other, since we have this large group playing. So when one player started to get what the game was all about, the other followed. And that was also very interesting to see. And for the fortress itself, well, we had about 30 computers in a room, but we needed to design a system where you could just start it with one button press, so you didn't have to have a technician at all time. So we put a lot of effort in this part as well, to make it workable, usable in the actual environment. And the wow factor, yeah, as I said, the environment itself was the big wow factor in this project. A little bit related to what we did in Callboys Fortress is another example. It's called It's About Time, and it's a museum exhibition that we at the university did in collaboration with a museum in Sweden. We had some extra challenges here, because the exhibition itself was supposed to go on tour. So up to this date, I think it has been around 10 or 15 museums. So we also needed to make not only fixed installation as in the Callboys Fortress game, but we needed to make portable ones. But the main challenges was about making games about time. It's a very broad concept, of course. Also to gamify a whole museum exhibition with all the challenges that arises there. Also make visual aesthetics compatible with the physical appearance of the exhibition. The museum curators, they had decided that the theme of the visual appearance should be steampunk inspired, like if technology today was used in the 1800s. And also games playable by anyone visiting the museum. So this is a short movie clip from the first day, the premiere of the exhibition. So you won't see any people moving around, but it will give you an overview of how everything worked together. So this is where it started. And you start with the gaming parts right away. So this is a time clock where you punch in, like you punch in for work. You take a card, and then you punch in. Let's see, punch in then, there. And this is not only to keep track of the users, but it's also a quiz game built into this. So we use different kind of games and different kind of game stations in order to enhance the experience. So when you punched in the first time, you are logged into the system, and there are 4 more stations where you can punch in and answer new questions about this. And what we thought was cool was to have the data visualized in real time. Here we see a painting or artwork where the data is visualized. So this was me up in the corner punching in. So if I would be using that time clock there, my icon would move down to where my current position was. So we built in logging devices in everything. So we knew how much the users would use these interactive kind of stations, because we put a lot of money and effort into them. So we also developed 3 iPad games based on a book called Momo, which is about time and how we use time in society. And even these games were built in a logging function. And this may be the most uninteractive station. You ride a virtual train and you can pull the handle of the emergency brake to make the train stop. And that was also an interesting part, because people were riding the train but not daring to pull the emergency brake because, well, you shouldn't pull the emergency brake, of course. But in this case, it was allowed to do that. And it's a little bit like the Imitation in Callboys Fortress Adventure. When the first user pulled the emergency brake, well, the brake was pulled all the time. And in terms of ease of use, we wanted to make the exhibition as, well, user-friendly as possible, encouraging the visitors to interact with everything, to touch everything. And that might be, well, a little bit against what museums are about in some cases, well, where you're not supposed to touch anything at all, right? But in this case, we wanted people to actually do something and actually touch and try out what's happening. So this is a telephone booth where you could put this connector into different connector holes and listen to people talking about how they perceive time and what time is meaning for them. And everything was logged. So we built this wireless connection system where everything in the museum space was talking to a server that we hid somewhere in a closet. And the server gathered the data, all the data. So we could see how much people were using these kind of interactive stations. So that was a part of the research of this project. We also did games, as I said, and we opted to use touch screens because we thought that, okay, this is something that people will recognize, and it's also kind of flexible in terms of hardware. We could, if something breaks down, we could just exchange the tablet to another one. And that is also something that we have learned to use ordinary consumer products in these kind of installations, because if something breaks down, then it's easy to replace. So this is a dialogue game talking about time, and we needed to design the game to work in the museum space, and we could not have any introductions, we could not have any menus, and we also identified that, well, people tend to use a station and then just walk away from it. So they also needed to be cyclic in some sort, or they needed to restart if a player just walked away from it. So the next user didn't have to wonder, okay, what is this all about? If the player was had come a long way into the game. And the most interesting thing that we found out when designing these games was the first two. This was about dialogue. This was about exploring the city of where this character Momo lives, and they were not used that much. But we tried to think, okay, games are considered to be a waste of time sometimes, right? That's the common notion of games. You can hear it a lot. So we tried to think, okay, what is the most time-wasting game mechanics that we can find? And there is a genre or so that's called clicker games, cookie clickers. And the aim of this game is only to click. So this round icon here is a clicker icon. And the game mechanics is just about clicking. You click that, and you see how many clicks you have got. And then when you reach a certain level, you get a star, or you get a point or something, a reward system just for clicking. And the interesting thing is that this was used a lot. When we looked at the statistics after the first month, we saw that the longest clicking period was about 10,000 clicks. Somebody has been standing and clicking 10,000 times in a row. And that's quite a lot, because if you stop clicking, the game will reset in 5 seconds or so. So it couldn't have been, of course you could have collaborated, but still. And if you would click 10 times per second, then, well, it would mean that you had been there for 16 minutes. So that's quite interesting to see that even these most basic game mechanics, they do something with our brain that makes us invest this time. And for the theme of the exhibition, it was a good thing actually, because we wanted to make people think about it. And what we thought would be the cool thing, the visualization of the player data, where players could see where they had punched in last with an icon, and so this they didn't understand. The users didn't understand this is the wall, and so it wasn't used. When we looked at the data, we saw that, well, people had maybe punched in 3 or 4 times at most, and then the dropout rate, it just was downhill from there. And also that in this kind of environment, this was a good interaction, just sitting riding the train without doing anything. So even a passive interaction could be a good thing in this kind of environment. So, well, yeah, the Pong design in this project was about the touch screens and also the big and grip-friendly things to interact with, like the emergency brake, and also we had big push-friendly buttons. And for the users, the museums that would receive the exhibition, plug-and-play auto-configurated devices, just plug them in, give them power, and everything should be connected, even though it was a quite advanced wireless network working behind. And the wow factor, what we thought would be cool, finding yourself in the exhibition with the HICC quiz game, well, it wasn't cool at all. It was riding a train and pushing a button. The third and the last project that I will talk about today is the most recent project that we have done. It's called Hidden in the Zoo. It's an educational game that creates awareness about the risks on the internet. So with a focus on sexual grooming of children. So it's a really serious topic. But we wanted to see if a game and game mechanics could be used to teach children these kind of things without talking about the subject itself. So the plan is we have done the first prototype and tested that, so hopefully we will get more funding to develop it further, but the plan is to have this game distributed to schools. So that is also an challenge, of course. So we're using a board game combined with a tablet device, and the tablet has some augmented reality functions that we used as the core game mechanics and the core gameplay, where the kids, they were hiding a treasure in the zoo. This is from one of our play sessions. It was reported on one of the Swedish news channels. So the game is played by 4 players in ages of 7 years and up, using both the tablet and also the board game. And we did this in a way that's, well, a little bit special. We looked at actual grooming cases to see what kind of mechanics are in that process. And we found out that there are a lot of nagging and threats and flattering and threats again. And, well, it's a really complicated and really stretched out process where some perpetrator tries to get information from the children sitting at home using social media or games or forum online. So that's also the creepy part of it. You're sitting at home and somebody wants to get you, to get some information, or to make the kids send pictures of themselves or whatever. And it was these kind of things that we tried to build game mechanics around. So we had, here we see that there is also a phone that pops up in the game session. And this phone, it started to mysteriously just sending messages to the players. So they are 4 players playing it, and the game is about hiding a treasure in this zoo. So the first thing that the players do is hiding their treasure, and then the game is about to finding the other players' treasures. But after they have played a little while, messages starts to appear on the tablet device that also wants to know where you have hidden your treasure. And you can get rewards, or you can get you could get threats, or you could get anything from this mysterious 5th player. You could get rewards in terms of, okay, if you send me a clue to where your treasure is hidden, then you can play a mini game, or I will give you a coin, or later on in the game, if you don't send me a picture of one of your clues, then I will show the last picture that you sent to all the players. So we related the game mechanics to the actual grooming process in order to make both an interesting game, but also to make the game session relatable in a discussion session afterwards. So the kids, they don't learn, or they aren't informed about the subject itself while playing the game. It happens afterwards, when you are with an adult, with a teacher, or with some expert on this matter, talking about, okay, do you remember what's happened in the game when this message popped up, and you were more or less forced to reveal your information. And it can seem that it's, you have maybe some information that doesn't seem so dangerous to reveal to someone, like, how dangerous could it be to talk about what my interests are, like I play football in this and that team, or my big brother is attending class in this school. But if you have many sources of information and combine this, the groomers can actually pinpoint quite correctly where you are located, and that's what we wanted to raise awareness about. And also the board game, it provides this social interaction. Since you are 4 players, you also get to discuss these things with your friends. So the combination with the augmented reality tablet and the board game, it seems to be an interesting mechanic of its own when doing these kind of school-based games. So the Pong Design in this project was about the augmented reality. We designed the game mechanics around the augmented reality functions. And also, of course, the board game, which was inspired by Monopoly. And that is something that, most children, they recognize this, and they like having physical things to move around. The touchscreen interface, of course, and the mini games that we had. So we also used the tablet device to let the players play some mini games as rewards, or when they were winning. And for the schools, we're focusing on having a tablet device, so it should be just downloadable from like Google Play or the iOS App Store. And the wow factor in this case is about the augmented reality as well. So both the design and the wow is about augmented reality, but maybe from different perspective. The children, they didn't reflect over the augmented reality at all. They just played it like a ordinary game. But the subject itself, that you can use games for these kind of purposes, and the game itself, because the kids, they really loved to play the game, and that was really heartwarming for us in the research group to see that, okay, this kind of design was working well. So, a little wrap up. So, working with clients outside the game development sector. So in most of the cases, 2 of the cases, there were museums and cultural heritage sites. We need to talk to and learn from each other in these cases. I mean, I know a lot about games in museums, but I don't know a lot about museums itself. So we need to talk about, well, how can we use games to make an experience as good as possible? And if you're designing games where the player is expected to play in a public space, keep it simple and keep it to the point, and also make it optional. And it's a little bit related to this, designing games to a very broad audience. Well, not all are interested to play if you're attending a museum, and that is okay. So in that example, so let museums be museums and not a gaming den. It should be an integrated, well-integrated part of the public space. And it's also interesting to see the collaboration between game developers, researchers, and the external client that, well, if we use research methodologies, well, I think all partners will get relevant data to that they can use in some way. This is maybe the most important point of it all. Collaborate, talk to each other and learn from each other. Meet and design games together to make it work in that specific place where it should be used. Okay, thank you so much. If you have any question, feel free to ask them. I will be here for a few minutes more, I guess, and I will be here until tomorrow otherwise. Thank you.